People always say you'll know when something is wrong, that you'll feel it instantly, that one day your dog will look different, act different, and something inside you will just click. A clear moment, a signal you can't miss. But the truth is much quieter than that. Most people don't know. Because what looks like strength is often silence. And what feels like peace is sometimes just your dog learning how to carry discomfort in a way that doesn't interrupt your world. They don't complain. They don't explain. They adjust. They wake up, they walk, they wag their tail, and they stay close to you in all the same ways they always have. And because of that, you assume everything is fine. You trust what you see. You trust the routine. But beneath that routine, something else can be happening. A slow, quiet story unfolding long before it ever becomes obvious. It doesn't begin with something dramatic. It begins with something small. So small that your mind almost immediately tries to dismiss it because it's easier to believe everything is okay than to sit with the possibility that it isn't. Maybe it's a slight tremble, not the kind that comes from cold, not fear, not excitement, just a faint, almost unnoticeable shaking that appears for a moment and then disappears again. You see it and your brain searches for a reason. There has to be a reason. There's always a reason. So you tell yourself it's nothing. And maybe sometimes it is. But when it happens again and again, something starts to feel different. Not obvious, not urgent. Just a quiet discomfort that lingers longer than the moment itself. Because when a dog trembles without a clear cause, it's rarely random. It can be their body trying to manage something deeper pain that hasn't reached the surface yet, a fever beginning to build, or a nervous system working harder than it should. Dogs don't always show pain the way we expect. They don't cry out. They don't stop everything. They adapt. And that trembling might be one of the first signs they can't fully control. Then there are the signs that feel easier to ignore because they fit into something we already believe. Like when your dog vomits. You see that yellow foam once, maybe early in the morning or late at night, and you brush it off. Dogs eat strange things. Their stomachs are sensitive. It happens. You move on. But then it happens again. And this time you hesitate for a second longer before you explain it away. Because it isn't food, it's bile. And when that yellow foam shows up repeatedly, especially when their stomach is empty, it starts to carry a different kind of weight. Not heavy enough to alarm you immediately, but enough to leave a mark in your thoughts. It can be a sign of irritation deep in the stomach, or pressure building in the liver, or an imbalance that hasn't fully revealed itself yet. The difficult part is how quiet it is, how easy it is to normalize, until one day you look back and realize it was never just random. It was a pattern forming slowly, patiently, waiting for you to notice. Some signs don't even look like behavior at all. They look like something you'd never think to check. Color. If you gently lift your dog's lip, there's a shade you've seen so many times you don't even register it anymore. A soft, healthy pink. Familiar. Reassuring, easy to overlook. And then one day it's slightly different, maybe paler, maybe deeper, maybe just enough of a shift that something inside you pauses, even if you can't explain why. Because that color says more than your dog ever could. Pale gums can point to circulation issues. Gray can suggest oxygen isn't moving the way it should. Deep red can signal heat, inflammation, or toxins building beneath the surface. It's a silent indicator. No movement, no sound, but incredibly honest. And once you learn to see it, you realize how much their body has been trying to communicate without ever making a noise. Then there are the habits that feel too normal to question, like drinking water. It's something you assume happens naturally. You fill the bowl. They drink. You don't measure it. You don't track it. You don't think about it. Until one day something feels off. You notice the bowl is empty again much sooner than it should be. Or the opposite, the water hasn't been touched at all. And there's a brief moment where your mind goes quiet. Because something so basic shouldn't change without a reason. Drinking more can be the body trying to compensate for rising blood sugar, for kidneys under stress, for internal heat that needs to be cooled. Drinking less can be something more subtle but heavier: pain, fatigue, a system already overwhelmed where even thirst doesn't feel important anymore. And once you start paying attention to something this simple, you begin to see how clearly it reflects everything happening underneath. Some changes are easier to see, but harder to interpret. Like the way your dog stands up. There was a time when it happened instantly. They heard you, saw you, felt your presence, and their body followed without hesitation. And then one day there's a pause. It's small, easy to miss if you're not looking directly at it. They shift their weight, adjust slightly, as if their body needs a moment to prepare, and when they finally stand, it feels heavier than it should. You might tell yourself they're just waking up slowly, but something about it stays with you, because that pause isn't always about rest. Sometimes it's about resistance, joints that don't move as freely, muscles that feel tighter than they used to, pain that has settled in quietly overnight without announcement. Even young dogs show this when something is wrong. Not dramatically, just enough to change the rhythm. And once you notice it, you start seeing it everywhere. Movement itself begins to shift. A step that lands softer. A pace that slows slightly. A path they avoid without explanation. At first it feels insignificant, but patterns don't start loud. They start small. Dogs are incredibly skilled at hiding discomfort. They redistribute weight. They adjust their posture. They move in ways that protect what hurts without revealing it. And over time, their world changes. Not because they want it to, but because their body is asking them to. You might see it in the way they hesitate before jumping, or the way they stop running sooner than they used to, or the way they choose stillness over play. It's not laziness, it's adaptation. And then there are the moments that are impossible to fully ignore. A sound, a soft, brief whine. Maybe when you pick them up. Maybe when they settle into a position. Maybe during something that used to be effortless. It's quick, easy to dismiss. But it lingers. Because dogs don't vocalize discomfort unless they need to. They tolerate, they endure. And when they finally make a sound, it's because something has crossed a line. That small whine is not drama, it's honesty. A signal that something inside them is no longer manageable in silence. You start to notice more. They hesitate before climbing onto the couch. They pause before playing. They move more carefully, as if they're thinking about each action before they take it. And in those moments you realize something difficult. They've been trying to stay strong for you, not because they don't feel pain, but because they don't know any other way to exist. When you begin to see these signs for what they are, everything changes. You stop waiting for something obvious. You stop assuming silence means comfort. You start paying attention to the smallest details, the patterns, the shifts, the moments that don't quite feel right, even if you can't explain them. And in that awareness, your role changes too. You're no longer just the person who feeds them, walks them, plays with them. You become the one person they rely on to notice what they cannot say. Because they won't always show pain in ways that are easy to understand, but they will always show something. And when you learn to see it, the bond between you becomes something deeper, something quieter, built not just on love, but on attention, on presence, on the willingness to look closer even when everything seems fine. Because loving them isn't just about the happy moments. It's about protecting them in the moments they can't protect themselves. And once you see that you can't unsee it, you start noticing the subtle shifts, the small changes, the things that used to pass you by. And that awareness might be one of the most important things you ever give them. If this made you look at your dog a little differently, stay with that feeling. Because there's another side to this connection that most people overlook. Not the signs of discomfort, but the quiet signals of trust. There is a moment every dog shows when they truly feel safe with you. And once you recognize it, you'll never look at them the same way again.